I'd like to share with you some of the best advice that I've received as a Christian. So I was at a conference a few months ago and I met this guy who's a well-known evangelist, and I asked him, what's the best advice that you would give to somebody like me who's starting in evangelism that you wish you would have received when you began? And what he told me just rocked me and blew my mind. Instead of directly answering my question, he started telling me the story about the man in John chapter 5, the man at the pool of Bethesda. He's the most helpless case there. For 38 years, the man has been an invalid. And he's just been neglected and just forgotten by the people. Priests walk by him every day. And when Jesus comes to the man, he asks him, do you want to be made well? I think we know the answer to that one. But then Jesus says something that just seems odd, really. He tells the man to rise, take up his mat, and walk. Now, the rising and the walking makes a whole lot of sense. But why take up the mat? It's just this constant reminder of 38 years of neglect, abandonment, shame, failure, but that's precisely the point. What Jesus is actually telling the man is to not forget where he came from. And I remember when he told me that hit me hard. His counsel reminds me of the story of two separate people in the Gospels, and their lives contrast in a unique way, but they actually converge at the feet of Jesus. The first is Simon the leper, a religious leader by trade who contracts leprosy. And this is the scary part, because to the Jews, if you contract leprosy, that means that you're cursed by God. So imagine being a religious leader who's cursed by God. He was then an outcast, couldn't be amongst his people, couldn't even be touched by anyone, had to live separately. But Jesus heals the man and restores his life and his ministry. Mary Magdalene, her story is somewhat similar. She also was an outcast, but because of a lifestyle of sexual sin. And this is something that separates her from the people, but Jesus finds her as well. Heals her. One place we're told that 7 demons were cast out of her. This woman's healed of her sordid past, and she's set free. Simon invites Jesus to his house for a meal, and Jesus is the guest of honor. But the focus changes when someone shows up to the house and steals the show, and her name is Mary. She comes to the house uninvited where this feast is happening, and she begins to weep at the feet of Jesus. She wets his feet with her tears, she dries it with her hair, and then pours this oil all over the head and feet of Jesus. The whole house is fragrant with this offering. Simon says if he knew who this was, he would not let this woman touch him like this. And the disciples say that she's basically wasting this. It's a waste of money to give her all for Jesus. She feels terrible, and Jesus says, leave her alone. But here's why I think this matters. In that day, the custom was when you had a guest that you were supposed to do these things for Jesus, to wash his feet and to anoint him with oil. For whatever reason, Simon didn't seem to see the need to do this for Jesus. I believe it's because Simon forgot where he came from. He forgot what Jesus delivered him from. But the opposite, I believe, is true for Mary. She remembered where she came from, and that's why she gave everything she had for Jesus. I don't know where you find yourself today. Maybe it's a story of Mary that resonates with you, that you've been giving your all for Jesus, and no one seems to appreciate or understand it around you. Maybe yours is the story of Simon the leper, that you just lost sight of how precious it is to sit at the feet of Jesus and to give him all that you've got. Regardless, here's the beautiful thing. The answer to both situations, to have them and to keep them, is to not forget where you came from.